In every city, there are stories that never made the papers. Not because they weren't important, but because they were inconvenient. They live in forgotten files, in half-finished investigations, in questions no one wanted answered. This isn't where justice always wins. This is where the echoes remain. This is Reverberating Noir. There's a grave at the top of the world. No headstone, no marker, just ice and silence, and a man who told everyone exactly what was happening to him, and no one listened.
Welcome to Reverberating Noir.
The case of Charles Francis Hall is one of the strangest murders in American history, not because of what happened, but because of how long it took anyone to believe it happened at all.
97 years. That's how long his body lay frozen in Greenland before anyone thought to look.
And when they finally did look, the ice had been keeping a secret.
The kind of secret that rewrites everything.
November the 8th, 1871. A man dies in a tent at the edge of the known world, whispering that he's been poisoned. His crew buries him fast. The doctor who may have killed him nails the coffin shut before the body is even inside. And the official record says stroke. Case closed.
That's the version that survived for nearly a century. And it almost held...
Almost. This is Reverberating Noir. I'm Adam Jones.
I'm Nina Jovovich. And tonight, we're going to the ice.
To understand what happened on the Polaris, you have to understand the man at the centre of it. Charles Francis Hall was not supposed to be an explorer. He was a blacksmith's apprentice from Cincinnati, Ohio. Self-educated, no naval training, no scientific credentials, no family connections to the institutions that funded these expeditions.
What he had was obsession.
When he read about Sir John Franklin's lost expedition, 129 men who vanished into the Arctic in 1845, something in Hall cracked open. While Europe's naval officers searched for ships and logbooks, Hall had a different theory. He believed survivors were still out there, sheltered by the Inuit.
And here's what's remarkable about that. He wasn't wrong to think it. He was wrong about the survivors. Franklin's men were long dead, but his instinct about the Inuit was exactly right. They knew what had happened. They had stories, relics, testimony. Hall just had to go and listen.
So he did. For 5 years he lived among the Inuit in northern Greenland, learned to build igloos, drive dog sleds, survive on seal meat, and patience. He came back with evidence that confirmed Franklin's fate. Evidence collected not from ships or instruments, but from elders who drew coastlines in the snow.
London's Royal Geographical Society laughed at him.
Of course they did.
But here's what I find genuinely unsettling about that. Hall was demonstrably right. His methods worked. And the men who dismissed him, the credentialed, the decorated, the institutionally approved, they had nothing. And yet when the time came for the North Pole expedition, those same institutions still treated Hall as the amateur in the room.
1871. America, still raw from the Civil War, wants something to celebrate. Congress approves $50,000, roughly $1.2 million in today's money, and hands the mission to Hall. The goal: plant the American flag at 90 degrees north, the vessel, the Polaris, a converted tugboat, and a crew that was already at war before the ice even came into view.
This is where the story stops being about exploration and starts being about something much darker.
Below decks, you had Sidney Budington, a veteran whaling captain who'd actually sailed these waters, a man who believed Hall had no business commanding anyone, and then there was Emil Bessels, 24 years old, German physician and scientist. Microscopes and petri dishes, where Hall had dog-eared Inuit stories.
Two completely different philosophies of survival. Hall's approach, trust the people who've lived here for generations, versus Bessels' approach, trust the instruments, trust the training, trust the hierarchy.
And Bessels, by all accounts, did not just disagree with Hall. He despised him.
That distinction matters. Disagreement is professional. Despising someone in a confined space, in the dark, with nowhere to go, that's something else entirely.
The Polaris sailed from New York in June of 1871. By late summer, they'd done something extraordinary. They pushed farther north than any ship in recorded history, 82 degrees, 29 minutes north latitude. Hall named their harbour, thank God harbour. He believed they were within reach of the pole itself.
And that's the moment the tension peaks. Because if Hall succeeds, if this self-educated blacksmith from Cincinnati plants the American flag at the top of the world, then Bessels is a footnote. Budington is a footnote. The men who sneered at Hall's methods become the men who enabled his triumph.
October the 24th, 1871. Hall returns from a scouting trip. He's exhausted. The ship's steward hands him a cup of coffee. He drinks it.
Within minutes, he's vomiting. Within hours, he can't stand.
He writes it off at first. Too much rich food after weeks on sledging rations. But then the symptoms change. Crushing pain in his stomach, paralysis creeping down his left side. And then the moments of sudden, terrible clarity. He bolts upright in his bunk, gasping, "They're poisoning me."
He refuses medicine from Bessels. He bars the cabin door. He pulls crewman George Tyson close and says, quietly, "I think I have been poisoned."
For 2 weeks, he alternates between fragile recovery and violent relapse. 2 weeks of a man slowly understanding what is happening to him. And then, on November the 8th, he dies.
And here is the detail that I keep coming back to. When they prepare to bury him, Bessels has the sailors nail the coffin shut before Hall's body is even placed inside. He forbids a headstone. When someone asks why, he says he was only an ordinary man.
The Navy investigation that followed was almost insulting in its brevity. Budington and Bessels testified that Hall died of apoplexy, a stroke. The board accepted it. In 1872, questioning a white officer's account was unthinkable. Accusing a scientist of murder was preposterous.
So the case was closed before it was ever opened.
And Hall's story became a footnote. Another tragic loss in the icy grip of ambition. For 97 years, the ice kept his secret.
Until a Dartmouth professor named Chauncey Loomis decided to go and look.
1968. Loomis had been studying Hall's case for years. He'd read the diaries, those frantic, terrified entries about poisoning. He'd compared crew testimonies that didn't align. And he understood something the Navy investigators hadn't considered. Arctic permafrost doesn't decay. It preserves.
He secured permission from Greenlandic authorities. He flew in, he dug down through the ice, and Hall's coffin was pristine. His clothes, his beard, his fingernails, preserved for nearly a century.
Samples went to Toronto's Centre of Forensic Sciences, and then the result came back.
Hall's hair and nails contained arsenic levels 100 times higher than normal. Concentrated, specifically, measurably concentrated in the final 2 weeks of his life.
This was not accidental exposure. Arsenic occurred naturally in the environment, in food, in equipment. Baseline levels were expected, but this pattern, this spike, was consistent with repeated, deliberate dosing over a specific window of time.
The coffee, then the medicine, then whatever came after. Someone fed Charles Francis Hall arsenic, slowly, methodically, until his body gave out.
And here is where the case becomes something more than a historical murder mystery, because we know what happened. We know when it happened. We even know how. We just don't know who.
Let's talk about that, because the forensic evidence points in a direction, even if it doesn't arrive at a name.
Bessels.
Bessels had means. Arsenic was in every 19th century medicine cabinet, used for stomach ailments, for preserving scientific specimens. He was the ship's doctor. He controlled what Hall consumed as medicine. He had access that no one else had in quite the same way. And he had motive, not just professional contempt, something more personal than that. Hall's survival was Bessels' humiliation. Hall's success was proof that everything Bessels believed about expertise and authority was wrong.
And when Hall accused him directly, Bessels didn't deny it. He smirked.
After the expedition, Bessels returned to Germany, lived quietly, published scientific papers, and never spoke of Hall again.
Then there's Budington. The motive there is simpler, and, in some ways, colder. The moment Hall died, command fell to him. Glory fell to him. And Hall was a moral stickler, the kind of man who would have made Budington's personal arrangements on the ship very uncomfortable. Some historians believe Hall's widow later pointed fingers at Budington, but with no physical evidence, it went nowhere.
And then there's the question neither of us wants to say out loud.
Could they have been working together?
Budington resented Hall's authority. Bessels resented Hall's existence. In a confined space, With no escape, with months of darkness ahead, resentment has a way of becoming something more organized than it starts out.
Loomis spent decades on this case. His book, Weird and Tragic Shores, lays out the evidence against Bessels with meticulous care. And then, he stops. Right at the edge of certainty, he stops. He writes, "The physical evidence points to him, but the truth died with Hall."
And that's the honest answer. After all of it, the forensic analysis, the archival research, the exhumation, we still cannot say with certainty who killed Charles Francis Hall.
But here's what I keep returning to. The question isn't just who, it's why no one believed him while he was still alive.
That's the part that doesn't get examined enough, Hall told people. He told Tyson. He refused medicine from Bessels. He barred his door. For 2 weeks, he communicated as clearly as a man in agony can communicate that something was being done to him deliberately. And the crew made a collective decision to interpret that as the ravings of a sick man.
Or they knew, and they chose silence.
Both possibilities are disturbing. The first means that a man can be murdered slowly in front of witnesses, and the witnesses will find a way to not see it. The second means something worse.
There's a pattern here that extends far beyond the Polaris. Think about what this ship actually was. A pressure cooker, extreme isolation, total darkness for months at a time, no escape, no outside authority, no accountability. We've seen versions of this on Antarctic bases, on space stations, on fishing vessels in the Bering Sea. The specific geography changes, the dynamic doesn't.
What the Polaris case demonstrates with unusual clarity, because we have the forensic evidence to anchor it, is what happens when institutional hierarchy and personal ego are sealed into a closed system with no release valve. The person at the top becomes a target. Not because they're weak, because they're in the way.
Hall was in the way of Bessels' scientific authority, in the way of Budington's command, in the way of the East Coast establishment's vision of what an explorer was supposed to look like. He was an outsider who was winning. And that, historically, is one of the most dangerous positions a person can occupy.
And yet, Hall was right. His methods worked. The Inuit knowledge he gathered, the survival techniques, the geographical intelligence, the understanding of ice behavior, that knowledge outlived him. Shackleton studied it. Amundsen studied it. Today, NASA trains astronauts using Inuit survival techniques. Modern polar expeditions travel with Inuit guides as equal partners.
He was poisoned by arsenic, but he was also poisoned by something older and more persistent, the arrogance of a system that valued credentials over competence, that valued the appearance of expertise over the practice of it.
And that system survived him. That's the part that should stay with you.
Hall's grave is still unmarked. The permafrost has closed back over it. Somewhere in northern Greenland, in a place that sees no sun for months at a time, he is still there, waiting, in a way, for an answer that may never come.
The forensic science confirmed the murder. It could not confirm the murderer. And so the case remains technically, legally, officially open.
I think about Hall's last 2 weeks often. Not the physical suffering, though, that was real and prolonged and cruel. I think about the clarity. In that tent, as the Arctic dark pressed in and the poison moved through him, he understood exactly what was happening. He said it plainly. He said it more than once. And the people around him chose not to hear it. That's the horror that doesn't fade. Not the arsenic, not the ice. The moment when someone tells the truth about what is being done to them and the room goes quiet.
If you found this case worth sitting with, consider subscribing to Reverberating Noir. We're here every week, in the dark, with the cases that don't let go.
Because some stories don't end. They just go cold. And cold, as Charles Francis Hall could tell you, is not the same as over.
The arsenic was confirmed. The dosing pattern was confirmed. The 2-week window was confirmed. The name of the person who administered it was not. And in the absence of that name, everyone who was in that ship's medical quarters remains, in some technical sense, a possibility.
The recording ends here, but the case doesn't. Somewhere, the evidence still exists. The questions still wait. If this story stayed with you, if it followed you into the silence, subscribe to Reverberating Noir. Not for us, for the stories that refuse to disappear.
Because as long as something doesn't make sense, the truth is still out there. And someone will find it.
Until next time, keep listening to the dark.